What if I told you a royal family so obsessed with power ended up creating a king so tragically broken, his mere appearance sparked rumors of demonic possession? This is the story of Charles II of Spain, a monarch so physically and mentally deformed that his own people feared he was cursed by the devil himself. But Charles wasn't cursed by dark magic. He was the final, crumbling result of Europe's most powerful and inbred dynasty, the Habsburgs. They called him El Hechizado, the bewitched one, but the real witchcraft wasn't supernatural. It was genealogy gone wrong. For over 2 centuries, the Habsburgs married their cousins, their nieces, even their own uncles and aunts. They did it to keep the royal bloodline pure, but instead, they were engineering a genetic time bomb. By the time Charles was born, he was more inbred than if his ancestors had lived on a deserted island for 10 generations. His parents, uncle and niece, his grandparents. Also, uncle and niece on both sides. Some family trees, Charles appears as his own cousin multiple times. What followed wasn't just a tragedy, it was a grotesque collapse of human biology witnessed by an entire continent. When foreign ambassadors first met Charles II, many were visibly horrified. This wasn't just a royal with bad teeth. This was a monarch who couldn't even close his mouth. His jaw jutted so far forward that his lips never touched. His mouth hung open like a broken puppet, constantly drooling. Food would spill out. Speech was a slurred, wet mess. Behind this deformity was the infamous Habsburg jaw, or what modern doctors call mandibular prognathism, a grotesque result of generations of inbreeding. Every meal had to be pureed like baby food. He choked often. His mother wrote in terror that he might die in his sleep from swallowing his own tongue. His royal proclamations? Gibberish. Diplomats had to guess what the king meant, not due to language barriers, but because his jaw made him unintelligible. This wasn't a medical anomaly. It was genetic collapse, visible on the face of a king. And the worst part, the family saw it happening and kept marrying closer relatives anyway. Charles's face was just the beginning. His entire body was a collection of defects so severe that modern doctors believe he shouldn't have survived childhood. At age 35, he looked like a dying child, 5 feet tall, hunched and frail. His limbs were skeletal. His torso was compressed. His head massive, like a balloon sitting atop a twig. He didn't walk until age 8. Even then, shuffled awkwardly, leaning on furniture like an elderly man. Mentally, things were even worse. Charles had the cognition of a child and the emotional control of a toddler. He couldn't read until 10. Tutors said teaching him was like pouring water into a broken cup. Nothing stayed. His tantrums were violent and erratic. He screamed, thrashed, then fell into long silences, sometimes sitting motionless for hours, staring blankly into space. His hair was patchy, falling out in clumps. His skin, pale and almost translucent. The royal portraits had to lie even. Their best attempts couldn't mask his degeneration. Most heartbreaking of all, he couldn't father children. His first wife wept on their wedding night. His reproductive organs, doctors found, were infantile. The dynasty had reached its final act, and its last king couldn't even do the one thing required of a ruler: produce an heir. When doctors failed, the Spanish court turned to something darker: exorcisms. Charles was publicly believed to be possessed. Priests claimed he was inhabited by 47 demons, each one responsible for a different deformity. These weren't secret ceremonies. They were full-scale performances held in the throne room in front of foreign dignitaries. Priests forced Charles to drink holy water mixed with ground-up bone relics. He vomited, shook, screamed, lost consciousness. Crucifixes were pressed against his skin until he cried out. Latin incantations were shouted over his convulsing body. Servants burned furniture, clothes, even gifts from foreign queens, anything suspected of holding dark energy. Charles believed it worked. His mind was so fragile, so desperate, he begged for more. This was torture disguised as salvation. It was the 17th century. But what was happening behind the palace walls could have come from the Dark Ages. When Charles II finally died in 1700, His death ended centuries of Habsburg rule and triggered a continental war. But the real horror came after. His autopsy was meant to be private. Instead, it became one of the most shocking medical reports in history. His heart, the size of a walnut, was black and shriveled, his lungs rotting, filled with fluid. The smell was so bad, some assistants ran from the room. His intestines were gangrenous, his testicles underdeveloped and useless. His brain, surrounded by fluid, damaged, and discolored, likely explaining his mental regression. The final verdict from his doctors: no single organ was found healthy. It was no longer superstition. It was science confirming what the world had always feared. Charles II wasn't cursed by witches, he was cursed by his own bloodline. When he died, Spain plunged into war. The War of Spanish Succession would kill hundreds of thousands, all because the Habsburgs couldn't stop marrying their own. Charles II didn't just end a dynasty, became proof that the most dangerous enemy of royal power is biology itself.